Today I wanted to look at these cards. Why? Because, well, I pulled the God of Battle, Halvar, at the front, which you see there. And I didn't really see a way to put him into any commander deck or any other deck that he could be fun in for me, so I didn't want to do that. But I still wanted to give him some shine, because, well, he should be a very important character in the game. He is a god, so he should be very important in that matter, and he is a really strong guy as well. The thing is, the gods of Kaldheim don't really feel like gods to me, so I feel like we discarded them rather fast, while they are still very potent in what they do, at least. And I think the reason why that is that they don't really feel like gods, and gods used to be these creatures that could come back or were indestructible, irremovable. They were very annoying in that way. But we liked them because that was a strong thing. And they felt like they were going really overhead, and these people are really close to us. For example, we have an old man that lies a bit, and then just after a thought seizing you, they die or get replaced by a stronger demon planeswalker. And then in the same world of Kaldheim, there is a massive space snake that's almost as hard to remove as, let's say, the real God of Deception from Theros. So this is why I think they feel weaker to us than they should be, because Halvar, for example, is still very strong, and he very much pushes the color identity of his color, which is in equipping creatures and making all of your small creatures matter as well. So in this way, he really pushes the color identity and makes it stronger, but I think we really forgot about him really fast. So Halvar loves weapons. He is the god of battle. He is friends with a lot of dwarves, and they helped him create his weapon. And Halvar also knows how to use them and redistribute them, sure, but he is seen fighting alone because he wants to defend his world. And he also is really good with cards like that have a big equipment cost, or like living weapons, or the new 4 Mirrodin cards, because they can enter but are pretty hard to change to a more suitable host. And Halvar really helps you with his second ability of changing an equipment to another creature. He can also do that with auras, which is pretty special. And then he also gives your creatures double strike, which is very potent. His other side is Sword of the Realm, which is used to create rifts or omen paths between the realms of Kaldheim. For now, Kaldheim. Maybe it becomes a planeswalking sword. But that sword is really strong as a card, because equipped creature gets 2 power, which makes them useful. Even a 1/1 becomes potent in that way. And they gain vigilance, but then your very important creatures also return when they die. I think that is because they might travel between the realms to stay safe or something like that. Yeah, it's a strong ability nonetheless. They get to enter again. You get to keep your strong creatures, your Halvar maybe. And if he is out, they also get double strike, so that is 4 power extra, making everything strong, no matter how weak they used to be. I talked a bit about his friend. For example, we have Cole the Forge Master, who is a 2-mana dwarf warrior that I guess also returns your equipped creatures or enchanted creatures to their owner's hand. But then also he gives them +1/+1, which is just a lord ability, a little bit weaker. But Cole is very affiliated with Halvar because Cole made his sword out of Twilight from a fallen Cosmos monster. He did this to impress him, and this shows us that the dwarves, at least, really respect the god of battle. And maybe that should put a little bit more respect on his name, I guess. Yeah, he also probably didn't kill the Cosmos monster himself. Dwarves are pretty small on this world. Then I found X-Card Armory, I think in the same pack, which also inspired me. And this is a card where we see the X-Card, the place where the dwarves of Kaldheim lived. We see gold, which is very common in this realm, and then we see axes and hammers, and these are the masterpieces of dwarves that they have created. And usually, when the dwarf dies, the equipment goes with him. But I guess Cole gave his masterpiece to someone else, a god. I think everyone can accept that. Then I thought about the fact that not only are dwarves on Kaldheim very good with equipment, but for example, Kaldheim is a world with a whole plane with strong artifact affinity as well. And then we have Rayef there, who is also a dwarf and an artificer, who made his gauntlet, which helps him make more artifacts. And now everyone on that world is using his design, so that is a different take on it, not just one masterpiece, but something that helps everyone create more. And funny thing, I guess this is a flavor bit for people that work with equipment, is that he also gives them double strike when they attack, only this time. So that is, in that way, he's much like Halvar as well. Maybe he's also a little bit of a god of battle, but only when attacking. So that was funny to me. I guess it's because the other creatures get to be twice as effective with him and his gloves on the battlefield, or something like that. And then we have more cards in this color identity that we talked about with Halvar. For example, White has a tutor, which is just for auras and equipment. In Armor, Open the Armory, which is just an uncommon. And the flavor here is that Avacyn returned, but in a bad way, and that these people of Innistrad now didn't use their weapons for werewolves, which they were made for, but they would be dusting them off to use against the angels. And that is a little bit about why this color identity would be resourceful. It's not just that it wants to be resourceful, it's also that it wants to use its resourcefulness to save their friends. Now back a little bit to the story of the dwarves, because I want to point a small thing out, which is that the dwarves are not only famous for equipment and weapons, but they are also famous for being small, basically. So they have the skalds, which are people that tell stories about everything that happens around Kaldheim. And they are chosen to go with adventurers on their adventures because they are so small and they see every moment as a very big thing. So they will very much blow up all the stories about these budding adventurers, and that is something they like. So that's why these skalds are so famous. Let's move on to our last bit of color identity piece, I guess, here with the equipment, but more about the artifacts, which is that artifacts should be used to protect, and that means that they don't have to be weapons, but it could also be the power stones, like we see with Rebecca. So Rebecca once built a floating temple, basically so that she could flirt with Yawgmoth, I guess. No, but that was not really her intention. She wanted a place where she could keep people safe, where it would be a sanctuary, where it would be safe for most people. But she didn't put her husband in it for some reason. She kept her husband with Yawgmoth, who had tried to sicken her husband with these power stones, and he had probably already been a little bit affected with Phreresis. But Rebecca learned about this and had basically exiled Yawgmoth and then put the power stones back on their pedestal, which is why artifacts you control have protection from each converted mana cost among artifacts you control. So artifacts protect artifacts. It's a little bit of a weird class, but it's flavorful in a weird way. And then of course we saw that these dwarves are usually in Boros colors, so they have red as well. So returning to them, and one example of how the red part of these dwarves on Kaldheim work is this dwarf berserker and their expression for riding goats, which is riding the goat, which means a foolhardy act of bravery. Now, the fact that this art shows such a heroic pose moment with an explosion in the background and the goat being so on board with this seems like these dwarves have a lot of experience with the proverbial riding the goat, which means they are very foolhardy. And it also points us in the direction of the fact that Red really just wants to use their weapons. They're not really about making them, they're not very good at it, but they like using them. And even though this axe is way too big for this dwarf, they will still use them. Even though it all doesn't work, they will still find a way to make it work because it's their proverbial way of living. So we're meant to wonder, aren't there any strong weaponsmiths in Red? Well, there is, for example, one, Togo, the goblin weaponsmith, but it seems like he only knows how to create rocks. So whenever land enters the battlefield, he creates a rock, which is what he likes to find. And these are weapons that can shock any target when they are sacrificed. So your creatures can throw them, and that is all that a rock does. But the goblins think he is a very good artificer for it, and it really shows us that, well, Red tries to be good at artifice, they really aren't, and they're mostly about that double striking part, about using them well. And then back to Kaladesh, we find the Foundry Inspector. And with that, we find the idea of that, the fact that constructs can really make more constructs. And this I thought was really funny, because now I wonder how many planes there are that are just massive automatic factories. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing, because look at this cute little assistant that can bring you one weapon, but they're not really good at it, so whenever they do, they die. Which is also very sad. A shame that it has to die for our sins to just retrieve one artifact. That's really sad. But we see with weapons that humans, or whatever type of humans we find, really can become weapons as well. Like with crafted war gear, where your creature becomes a weapon because when the weapon goes away, the creature goes away. They basically don't have any use for whoever put this crafted war gear on, because, well, if they aren't efficient in battle anymore, they might as well be gone. Then we have another take on that sort of philosophy, which is Armory of Aroas, a 2-mana artifact equipment which gives +1 counters as if battling makes your creature stronger from their experience. And it says each weapon is as unique as the champion who carried it in battle. This is a little bit more respectful, but even these people that seem to be respectful of their soldiers only saw them as soldiers. They only saw them as their weapons. Then I have a little piece of how artifacts can be history and how they can return history back into this world. They're a sort of gateway in that matter. And we see this statue of Foreboding statue, which is a helmet that lets you ramp in your Innistrad reverted way, where any landscape that is uneasy could make mana. It is as if they get inspired by unease. And the flavor says the sand eroded and rolling sounded from underground until it came alive as the Forsaken Treasure. So yeah, this is literally a piece of history that came back, and you can see a lot of it, but you probably won't see this one for very long, I guess. But it still makes the mana, which means unease has become fright, as you get the mana whenever combat commences, or at least at your pre-main phase, pre-combat main phase. And then I have a little bit of a small piece which I found was funny, which is a green artificer, and that is only made possible because of Phyrexia, I guess, because Phyrexia is such a place for artifice, but it really doesn't have much to do with greenness, so it really goes out of its color identity for it. But it needed artifice in the color for the theme of Phyrexia. This is Ich Takik, which basically means to take and to improve, or to reap and give. And although it is a little bit different, it is still evolution that we see here, because Ich Takik takes metallic parts of any body and then puts it on his golems, and that is why Vorinclex loves him. Because the golems can hunt and they don't think. So that is all the things that Vorinclex likes. So in a way, this is a form of evolution as well. And then circling back to Halvar, we see the classic look upon equipment, which is we need to protect, but we also want to battle very eagerly. And yes, it is about protection, but you are still making weapons. So you're still making war and you are not really defending. You are more about battle than about defense. And I think we saw that defection in the story as well, where Halvar kept battling even though everyone was already safe. So yeah, I think that makes him a god still. It makes him an essence. It makes him something and not anything else. And I think that should be the new essence of this magnificent creature type, and it should be explored more. Thank you for watching.